We received a main board for a Vizio Smart LED TV, one of their first generation, and the customer says it doesn't have power. So before we plug it in, we're going to do a couple quick multimeter checks to make sure there are no shorts and that we're not going to damage the board further by live testing it. So let's bring it to the bench and see what we get. I have my meter set to beep mode, so when there's a short, the meter beeps. So we're going to start with our fuses up here. That one's good. Also good. Oh, nope, just wasn't making proper contact. So that one's also good. Let's see, we all have a couple also down here. That one's good, and last one, also good. Next, we're going to want to check our HDMI processor chip. This one's a Silicon Image brand, and without bringing up the schematics to identify all the voltage in and out, we're just going to do some random checks on some of the capacitors instead. That's just going to be a little easier and faster. Typically when these chips short out, you'll get a lot of shorts. So a lot of these capacitors will be shorted and beep, but that is not the case here. Sometimes we also see some of these caps short out when the HDMI processor goes out, but those are also fine. And finally, the Q29 transistor over here can short out, so we'll check that one. And also no shorts. So the last step would be to making sure the processor chip is not shorted, so we'll flip the board over. And same as the HDMI processor, we're just going to pick a couple of random capacitors and check those for shorts. Okay, so that first one I'm checking here is shorted. Let's see if this one... Yep, this one's also shorted. Let's check these. Let's do a couple smaller ones. Not shorted. Shorted. Check these. And no shorts. Let's check the RAM bricks up here. Same thing, no short. All right, but because we had several of them beep right behind the processor chip, that means our processor chip is shorted to ground right now and will need to be removed. So that's going to be our first step. So let's go ahead and get that started. In order to remove the heatsink, we actually had to desolder over here, here, and here, these 3 pins. And then you can gently wiggle it off. It will actually still be stuck on there because of the thermal pad will be attached to the chip. So you want to be very gentle and careful. Typically, I recommend using a little bit of hot air, a little heat to loosen it up. Otherwise, you might actually rip the chip off of the board. So with the heatsink removed, we've exposed our main processor chip as well as our NAND chip over here to the right. So I just zoomed in a little bit more on the main processor chip and I'm noticing a little bit of browning. So what it is indication of flux. Someone tried to fix this before. They probably used some flux and hot air, and most likely that's why we have shorts on the processor chip. They either used too much air, hot air, too much heat, or they prodded the chip too hard and they caused some sort of short on the chip, because a shorted chip does not occur naturally. So most likely it was due because of a bad repair attempt. I'm also noticing that the NAND is not stock. I can tell there is non-factory solder on there, so most likely someone also replaced that NAND chip. One thing on that NAND chip is I know some people sell the repair kit for this board as that NAND to fix most of the problems, but the reality is that replacing that NAND will almost never fix this board for you. 9 times out of 10, the issue is with your processor chip, and then the remaining 10% is most likely with your Silicon Image, the HDMI processor shorting out. And a quick mention before we start the repair: if you ever do find one of your fuses being blown and also down here, typically that's going to be due to a misalignment in your ribbon. If you power up the TV with the ribbon not perfectly inserted, it could cause a short between one of your voltage lines to ground, and one of those fuses will blow, causing the board to appear completely dead. So if the board is completely dead post-repair, or you had a good board sent in and now it's dead, that might be why. So just be careful when you're putting in your ribbons. We've just placed the main board on our BGA rework machine. Started the heat profile, so we're going to wait a couple minutes for it to reach temperature. And once it does, all the solder balls between the chip and the circuit board will be molten, at which point we'll be able to remove and lift that chip off. We've just reached our temperatures, so we're going to go ahead and remove the chip. and proceed with some cleaning of the board. We are noticing some missing traces. So it's very possible that whoever tampered with this board previously damaged the circuit board to a point where we may not be able to fix it anymore. We're removing all of the old solder on the board. Now that we have our chip removed, we're going to flip the board back over and recheck for those shorts, see if they're still there or if we got rid of them. Just checking those big caps. Again, still in beep mode, so when my leads touch, they beep, indicating a short. And no short there. No short there. So it looks like removing that processor has gotten rid of the shorts on the board. So now we can go ahead and put a new one on. But first, let's take a closer look at all those ripped traces. Looking closer, we do have some missing traces at the top, in the center there, and about 20 or 30 down here. Now, most of these do look to be no connects, except for just the one with a trace coming down right here. So we'll have to rebuild just one trace, and that should do it. Just applying a little bit of new flux for the installation of our new chip, and we'll do a quick little check to make sure our rebuilt trace is still in good condition. We've reached our melting temperatures, and so we're all set. We're going to let the board cool off for a few minutes and then recheck to make sure our shorts didn't come back. And so far we're good. We're still in beep mode again. Whoops. And no shorts. And again, once it settles, no short. Okay, so reinstalling the new chip. We're good to go. We have our new trace fixed, so no more shorts. Let's go ahead and do some live testing now. So I plugged in the board back into our test jig. As you can tell, not everything is plugged in, and that's just because we don't need the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Right now we're just trying to see if it's at least turning on. So let's go ahead and plug it in and see what we get. So we do get the standby amber light, and typically what we get is a flashing amber white for a couple minutes before we can then turn the TV on. But it looks like it's not actually flashing. I had a feeling that was going to be the case just because the NAND chip was replaced. And as I had mentioned earlier, the NAND chip almost never fails. So when we see someone replacing it, typically it means we have more damage than repairs. And that's also why I didn't put the heatsink back on. I figured we were going to have to do more work anyways. On initial inspection, it looks like most of the pins are properly soldered in. I used this dental tool to wreck the pins anyways, just to make sure there are no loose pins. And as you can tell, the second to last pin is loose, so I'm just going to use a little fine tip needle to line it back up. We'll check the other side. And there's first one here. Third pin's also loose. Okay, and it looks like there's actually a lot of loose pins on this side, so I'm not going to keep raking because I'm going to actually cause more work to do to line them back up. So we'll just line these back up and just resolder the whole side. Extra flux first, and a smidge of solder. Do one more check. We have the board back in the TV one more time. Let's plug it back in and see if it initializes this time. So we still have our standby, fingers crossed. Come on. Yes. Okay. Woo. So it is initializing now, which means we're making more progress. I still have a feeling that there's going to be a little bit more to do just because of the level of damage that there was and tampering. But let's let it finish initializing. That can take about a couple minutes, and then we'll come back and power it on and see if we can actually get picture or at least get it to turn on. Just finished initializing, so I'm going to try and power it on with the remote, and we'll see what happens. It did turn white, and I heard the LEDs and I can see them turning on. Let's take a look at the screen, and we have, whoops, I have a loose board, so gotta be careful. We have picture. Are you able to see that? Next step is we'll wait another minute or so for the TV to fully initialize into the menus. And then we'll do some checks on the HDMIs, make sure those work. I just plugged in the Fire Stick. Oh, that's loud. Okay, well, we plugged in the Fire Stick and it looks like it is working. So we do have our HDMIs. I'm gonna go into the menus real quick. And it does look like I have the options to navigate around. Okay. And last thing I wanna do is just check my inputs, make sure they're all appearing. So I have 1, 2, 3 and the side. The reason I want to do that is because sometimes some of these NAND chips, if they're bad, they're actually not going to show you all of the options for the HDMIs, or the menus will navigate really, really slowly. But that's not the case here, so I think that NAND chip is good. It looks like we probably fixed this board. We just need to put the heatsink back on and then just do some extended testing. What am I saying again? So the board's been live testing for some time now and it's fully functional. Just wanted to mention, if you ever want to work on your own board and you want to try to do reworks or reflowing your processor chip, make sure to double check it for shorts like we did in the video so that you don't plug it in if it has shorts. Luckily in our scenario, we didn't have extra damage, which typically is not the case. Usually when we have shorted processors, we have a lot more damage, and usually those RAM bricks above the processor also fail and need to be replaced. So we were just lucky on this one, and if you found the video helpful or useful, leave us a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.